Arizona basketball has its matchup, and it's the Clemson Tigers in the Sweet 16. How did Arizona get here? How did Clemson get here? All that and more.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats. I am your host, Mike Luke. Our show is brought to you by FanDuel. All right, now, Arizona basketball is in the Sweet 16 against the Clemson Tigers, my friends, against the Clemson Tigers. Okay, this is going to be it's going to be an interesting game, but let's rehash a little bit of how Arizona got here, and then we will get to our friends from Clemson. First, Arizona obviously took care of business against Long Beach State. Wasn't a great first half, but they were able to do what they needed to do to get the dub. And then in the round of 32, they were able to take care of business against Dayton. Now again, obviously, the Dayton game was weird because Arizona was clearly better than Dayton. You could tell that within the first 5 minutes of the game that Arizona just had better players, and it showed that. Now, granted, Arizona wasn't going to go 7 of 9 from three-point range or whatever they started out, but Arizona was clearly a better team than Dayton. But Arizona did show some of its flaws, though, and I think that's where it's also a little bit tricky because Arizona did show that, listen, man, Arizona's going to have some dumb turnovers at some point, and then at some point, you're also going to probably let the team back into the game, and that's exactly what they did. But Jaden Bradley to the rescue. Now, a good thing about this game, though, for Arizona was that it also showed off some of that depth that Arizona has. And not only does it show off a little bit of the depth that Arizona has, it also shows that this team, when push comes to shove, you got a couple nuclear weapons coming off the bench. Jaden Bradley would be a starter almost anywhere. And not only would he be a starter almost anywhere, that's going to be an interesting decision that Arizona is going to have to make next year because I don't believe that Jaden Bradley is probably going to come off the bench again. But be that as it may, Arizona was just a better team than Dayton. They were deeper than Dayton. And when Umar Ballo, leader of men, got caught up in kind of those those pick and roll defenses, Arizona was able to make that switch. And Arizona, again, it wasn't ideal because you brought in Keyshawn Johnson. They immediately threw it over the top to Deron Holmes for a dunk. And then after that, KJ Lewis, God bless him, it was still going to be difficult for him because he was a 6'4" guard that was just trying to get really physical with Deron Holmes, and they ended up fouling. But it also showed Arizona's position flexibility. And not only did it show Arizona's position flexibility, it also showed that, when the chips are down, this team is able to play a lot of different styles. And they've also shown that they can win without great performances from Caleb Love. Got to look at that. So there is that. Now, obviously, in this game going forward, you're obviously winning go home. I think with Arizona, you've got to essentially be, when it comes to Kylan Boswell, listen, obviously I'm the people that don't want to start him. I don't get that one at all. You start him. You go with what got you to this point. But I'm also kind of at the point where, there's got to be a quick hook for him. And not only does there have to be a quick hook for him, there also has to be because again, you've got a real difference maker off the bench in Jaden Bradley. You need to be able to show that one. And not only do you need to be able to realize that that's there, you got to be able to make that case. And I think that Arizona will do that. Big fan of how Tommy Lloyd handled that. I thought Tommy Lloyd handled it very, very well. And we'll see that going forward. But again, we're in win now mode. And not only are we're in win now mode, we are also kind of at the point where obviously Arizona is looking at big pictures. And again, one thing before we get into Clemson, Jody Ayler mentioned this. Arizona fans, and I'm more guilty of this than really anybody. We always kind of get caught up in let's just look to the future. Let's just look to whatever. No, you got to win now. This is a team that can make the Final Four. This is a team that is every bit capable of being able to make the Final Four. This has got to be the year, and Arizona fans should expect accordingly, because Arizona is better than Clemson. Not only is Arizona better than Clemson, Clemson is a good, solid team for sure. But you look at that roster, you look at that Clemson team, Arizona's just got better players. Arizona's got more dogs. Arizona's got more dudes that can just make plays and can fill up the stat sheet. And we're going to get to that now. So let's look at a little bit of Clemson's. Lineup. Now, again, Clemson is solid. They are definitely a solid team. They're in the Sweet 16 for a reason, and they've got some good wins this year. They got some very good wins. But the one thing though that I will say is they're not a dynamic team, and not only are they not a dynamic team, they kind of take what the defense gives. But let's start up front then. You got Hall, big dude, 18.5 points per game, 6 rebounds. Good player, no doubt about it. This is also a player that Arizona should not wreck Arizona. I would be very surprised if that was the case. Again, a good big man, 18 points, 6 boards, can block a few shots, but Umar Ballo should be able to have his way with him. And not only should he be able to have his way with him, I think he should be able to have he should be able to do really well. And this is also a game too where if he struggles a little bit, then Keyshawn Johnson is more than capable of being able to cover him. And not only is he more than capable of being able to cover him, I think he should be able to at least, hang his own on that one. So again, that's kind of the where you're looking at with Clemson, is that you're going to have a bunch of solid guys. Now, again, they got a pretty deep rotation as well, and we're going to get into all the players. But you go what 1, 2, 3, 4. You go 7 deep and 7 legitimate minutes where guys are getting 15 minutes per game, and then after that, you got Joe Girard III. All right, now you might remember him to say, wait a second, because I do remember that name. I was looking, I was like, that name's familiar. Syracuse. And again, he was a good player at Syracuse. Now he is at Virginia. Now he's at Clemson, and he shoots a lot of threes. He's a good 3-point shooter. He's not a Salim Stoudemire 3-point shooter. He's more like 36% 3-point shooter, but he is a good 3-point shooter. Now, I think with Arizona, one thing you got to keep in mind though is they showed a very, very they were very, very good at being able to run the ball or run teams off of the 3-point line against Dayton. Dayton's a better 3-point shooting team than Clemson. That was obviously something that Tommy Lloyd had in his game plan, had in his bag of tricks, where he was going to run you off the 3-point line, and he did a very, very good job of that against Dayton. And I would look for him to do that against Clemson, because, again, a big thing, I think a lot of frustrations with this Arizona team was that, they didn't defend the 3 very well. Well, they defended the 3 pretty well against Dayton, and I think that also shows, too, a little bit of a Tommy Lloyd's ability to be able to adapt on the fly, and we are going to talk more about that going forward, and Lloyd's ability to be able to do just that. But first, FanDuel. All right, now you might be watching these games, and you're like, man, I wish I could put a little bit of scratch on this. FanDuel says, come to us. FanDuel.com/lockedon. This is where it's at. You want to be able to bet when you know that your money is good. You know your money is good with FanDuel, and not only do you know that your money is good with FanDuel, you know that it is going to be a really, it's going to be fun, because you can bet before the game, you can bet after the game, you can bet. Or after the game, well, for the next game, or you can bet during the game. You can bet futures, you can bet props, you can bet all of that. Check it out, FanDuel.com/lockedon. This is where it's at. You know your money's good, and this is the best time of the year. It is the NCAA tournament, my friends. It is the NCAA tournament, and this is the time that you want to get in there. Now, you might also say, man, I got to be able to, I need my car fixed, or I got to get a car part, but I want to spend that money on FanDuel. I want to be able to save a little bit of money. All right, eBay Motors says, come to us, my friend, come to us. Millions of parts for your MVP. Win every time with parts that fit your ride. eBay Motors. All right, now, the great thing about eBay Motors is that you can cut out the middleman. You can go in there and you could say, all right, I want to be able to get, let's see here. I don't want to be screwed on something, so I want to be able to get this, this, and this. And then I'm going to take it to my friend who will be able to do it. That's what you want. eBay Motors is here for you. Millions of parts for your MVP. Win every time with parts that fit your ride. Thanks for keeping it locked on, Wildcats, and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now let's talk about some of the other players. Then you got Chase Hunter, solid guard, but again, guy averaging about 12 and 3. Again, good player, but this is not somebody that should overwhelm Arizona. Now, this is kind of where it goes into with the Kylan Boswell, where, listen, I'm starting Kylan, but the second that Kylan starts struggling or it doesn't look like his confidence is there, I'm going to put in Jaden Bradley. And because I think Jaden Bradley is obviously the difference maker, the game changer that Arizona needs. And not only is he the difference maker, game changer that Arizona needs, he's the dude who things just kind of flow. When Jaden Bradley's in the game, and this has kind of been the case all season, there's just kind of a sense of confidence out there. There's a sense of just kind of a confidence, I guess, for lack of a better term, that things are going to be all right, that Jaden's got this, and he can do kind of everything. Now, again, I know he's not a great three-point shooter. I get that, but he's also a timely three-point shooter. He's made big shots. He's made big jump shots this entire season. And that's something that, again, that you can't really necessarily quantify. And then defensively, he's a pest. I think that's going to be a big case in this game as well. He's going to have to be in there against Clemson because, again, you're going to want more. You're going to want more. You're going to want more possessions. You're going to want more ability to be able to, put the ball on the floor and be able to make some plays. And then that's the case. I believe Jaden Bradley is going to be a big instrumental part of this team going forward. And not only is he going to be an instrumental part of this team going forward, he is going to be the guy who I think is sometimes going to kind of carry Arizona because he's going to have the ball in his hands. I'd look for more of that, honestly, because you got to remember with Bradley, it's not necessarily just the defense. It's also just kind of the ability to be able to athletically do some things that maybe Kylan can't quite do. But either way, Bradley, very, very good. And then, so let's get back to Clemson, though. And then Shefflin up front. All right. This guy's got the Jose Perez dad body. It's awesome to watch. Likes throwing his body around, obviously. I mean, as he should. And he's kind of a double-double guy. 10 points, 10 boards, and he's going to be tough. He's going to be physical. This is also a player, though, that Arizona should not be able to beat Arizona or be able to push Arizona around. Arizona should be able to do exactly what they want against him. Because, again, I think he's kind of the embodiment of Clemson and that he's a good, tough, physical player. But he's also not somebody that you're going to look at and be like, all right, he just dropped 23 and 13 on us. This is this is a matchup for Keyshawn Johnson. Keyshawn Johnson should be able to acquit himself, I think, very well in this matchup. And not only be able to acquit himself very well, I think be able to look at it and be like, all right, well, I'm going to be able to take advantage of this matchup. And I expect Keyshawn Johnson to do a very, very good job there. And again, up front, I think Arizona's good. And not only up front do I think they're good, I think on the perimeter, which we're going to get to in just a minute, Arizona's got more players. And that's kind of what this comes down to for me. Again, this is March. Arizona has lost a lot of games in the NCAA tournament to inferior competition. We all know it. We've all lived it. We've all seen it. We all know. But listen, you're in the Sweet 16 now. You're going. This is a big game for Tommy Lloyd. And not only is it a big game for Tommy Lloyd, it's a game that he should win. I mean, Arizona's favored, and Arizona's still favored to come out of this region. So you got to keep all of that in mind. And not only do you have to keep all of that in mind, you also got to say that this is a squad that is built to win a national championship. Again, I think a lot of people were frustrated pretty much all season that Arizona didn't, that Arizona didn't play well at times, that Arizona didn't do this, that Arizona didn't do that. And I was one of them because it felt like there wasn't a consistent effort all the time. And not only did it feel like there wasn't a consistent effort, it felt like there was just something in play where it was just not ideal. But we're in a new year, new me. And this Arizona team is just better across the board than Clemson. Now, again, Clemson's probably a little bit better at, maybe they're cumulative. They draw on you, but I don't look at Clemson. I don't look at Clemson and say that I don't know that anybody on this team would start. Maybe Hunter, but that's it. I don't know anybody that would start for the University of Arizona. And generally, when Arizona has lost to teams in the tournament, there's been a couple players that would definitely start. I mean, heck, I could go back to Devin Davis at, Miami of Ohio. Devin Davis would have definitely started at the University of Arizona. And there's other examples, obviously, but we don't need to get into those because we are going to stay positive. Clemson just got less talent than Arizona. That's just what it comes down to. They got less talent. And not only do they have less talent, they also have a squad. They have a roster that Arizona should match up very well with, because on the perimeter and up front, Clemson just doesn't have the horses that Arizona does. And I think that's something that we very much need to keep in mind. So there is obviously that. And this team is ready. This Arizona team is ready. But one thing you got to go back to with Clemson, I'm going to give them a little bit of credit as well, is that Clemson, the ACC's balled out this year. There's no real, you can't really dispute what the ACC has done in the NCAA tournament. North Carolina has rolled, Duke has rolled, and Clemson has rolled. Now, again, the Clemson-Baylor game was interesting. I'm happier to play Clemson, to be honest with you, because Baylor, to me, while kind of up and down and kind of you never knew exactly what you were going to get, Baylor, I think, also had a higher upside, and not only not a higher upside, but just more talent, more NBA dudes. And when in doubt, I know this can get you into some trouble, but when in doubt, I'm going to go against the team that's got less NBA, or I'd prefer to go against the team that has less NBA guys. That's not always the case. John Calipari proves that every single season that's not always the case, but I'd rather play Clemson. But again, Clemson was solid, 11-9 in the ACC. And again, you got Duke, you got North Carolina, you got some pretty good teams that they've gone against. So there is that. But I do believe, and I'm going to keep coming back to this, this is more about Arizona. With Arizona, this is something where this team at Arizona is just good across the board. And that's what I mean, is that you look at this Clemson team, I just don't know who would start at Arizona. And that is a huge key to me, is that I don't see really anybody necessarily at Clemson that would start at Arizona. So if that's the case, then Arizona should roll. And Tommy Lloyd, this is obviously a big game for Tommy Lloyd, because if Arizona gets to the Sweet 16, if Arizona gets to the Elite 8, you get a lot of monkeys off your back, because people start saying, all right, well, you made that tournament run, you proved it. And then I think you have a little bit of breathing room going into the Elite, or going into the Big 12, which I think is something that Tommy Lloyd would not that he needs it, but it's something that is obviously good. And this is a game, again, that Arizona, in my opinion, should win, because even though Clemson's deep and they have less talent, and that's kind of where I'm at with that. Now, we are going to get into not necessarily a prediction, but keys to the game coming up here. But first, Nissan, my friends, Nissan. Here's the deal. Nissan. I have a Nissan. Go find your next big adventure. Shop now at nissanusa.com. I love this Nissan. It's sleek. It handles well. Not only does it handle well, it looks smooth, and I am happy about it. And I don't have to worry about it getting stolen. My previous car, which I liked as well, kept getting stolen. This car is not getting stolen. Nobody will mess with the Nissan. Go find your next big adventure. Shop now at nissanusa.com. another spot where you will thank me later on this, but Nissan USA is a nissanusa.com. Get all kinds of stuff. You can get the Altima, you can get the Maxima, you can get the Rogue, you can get a variety of options. It's fun, it's cool. Everybody likes Nissan. So again, check it out. This isn't your father's Nissan. These cars are good-looking vehicles, good-looking rides. Cruise through the city with your Nissan. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now, a win for Tommy Lloyd, obviously, then you want to keep pushing that. You want to be able to beat North Carolina. You want to be able to get to the Final Four. Because let's be honest, Arizona hasn't been to a Final Four in 23 years. One thing, though, that I got to say, and I got to keep pushing back a little bit on this, is that I know that's a cute phrase for people. It's a cute catch-all, all of that. Still, Arizona is a team that has been to, 6 Elite Eights in that time period? Well, let me think off the top of my head. Miller had 3, then Lute had 03, 05. All right. And the margin for error of that was like -1 point. Our margin for a margin of loss was essentially 1 point. So there is that. These people are making it out like it's like it's Georgetown, where you've just been out in the college basketball wilderness for the last 20 years. Get out of here with that nonsense. That's that's obviously not the case here. But at the end of the day, it is a results-oriented business, and you want to be able to get to the Final Four. It's that simple. So this is a great opportunity for Arizona. We've seen other great opportunities. This is a great opportunity because Arizona should beat Clemson. I'm not saying they will. We're going to get to the predictions tomorrow, but Arizona should beat Clemson. They just should. They're better than Clemson, and they should beat Clemson. But then after that, it's probably going to be kind of a pick'em game against North Carolina. Now, and a pick'em game, it's going to be a game where Arizona is kind of looking at a mirror of themselves, and that's something that is going to be interesting. From Baycott up front to Ingram, Keyshawn, Cormac Ryan, Pella Larson, obviously RJ Davis, Caleb Love. There's all kinds of intriguing factors, and sometimes too, regarding Caleb Love, sometimes too, just a separation is best for both parties. And I'm happy that Caleb Love seems to be liked by the North Carolina fan base, at least going on message boards. They're wishing him well. They're happy for him. And they said that, they're going to root for him as long as he's not playing North Carolina. So that's kind of a cool thing. And a couple people mentioned, too, that Caleb Love will always be a Tar Heel. That is awesome. We will gladly take this year of Caleb Love, though, because he has been much different for Arizona. But coming up tomorrow, we're going to get the prediction time because, again, we will be then at that point, we will be one day out from Arizona Clemson. And again, this is the time to hop on FanDuel and maybe get a little bit of cheddar in the game, a little bit of cheese. But so again, though, awesome. Arizona's in the Sweet 16. They took care of business. We have to be able to give Tommy Lloyd a ton of credit. And not only a ton of credit, we got to give this roster a ton of credit too, because they were tough and they beat the odds in certain ways, because a lot of people thought that they would probably falter and were worried about it. I was worried about it as well. But on that note, have a great rest of your Tuesday. Thanks a ton for keeping it locked on Wildcats. We will be back with you tomorrow. Bear down, back the A.